starting now. So welcome everyone to We're Still Here. It's the 50th anniversary of Stonewall. If you don't know already, my name is Hunter Bullard. I'm one of the executive directors of the Wyoming Association of Activists, and I'm going to be one of your MCs tonight. So great to be here with y'all.
And I'm Rhiannon McLean, the other executive director of the WAA and the spokesperson for the Casper Youth for Change. I will be your other MC tonight. First, we would like to thank you all for coming. It is truly amazing to be able to gather here 50 years after the first Pride. We would also like to thank Casper Pride and Casper PFLAG for their unwavering support and belief in this event, as well as Dee Lundberg for allowing us to use her space here at United Church of Christ. We would also like to thank all of our honored guest speakers, RC Johnson, Cody Clark, Bailee Foster, and Rob Johnston. Not only have they agreed to speak here, but they've also been monumental in forming this event past the idea stage. Lastly, we would like to thank everyone on our event planning board who we have not yet mentioned, Ender Collins and Tanner Ewald. Without their help, this event simply would not be possible. Now, on to the business of the night. We appreciate you all gathering here to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. On June 28, 1969, police raided the Stonewall in New York City, an event that changed the course of LGBTQ plus liberation forever. During a police raid of this hub of LGBTQ culture, violence broke out into protest. This event, although horrible in the way it started, represented the LGBTQ plus movement fighting back against the oppressive government and society that consider them to be immoral. When we celebrate Pride Month, it is important to remember that Stonewall was the first Pride.
And now, 50 years later, it would seem we've come a long way from the events that led to the raiding of the Stonewall Inn. We have gone from the days of being covertly marked with a pink triangle to waving rainbow banners proudly in the streets. Now, we've gone from the days of having to start a riot to fight for our rights to a whole month of visibility being celebrated. We have progressed, but the fight is nowhere near over.
The New York Times reported over 25 homicides of transgender women in 2017, and that number continues to rise year by year. Of the transgender women murdered, close to 80% have been women of color. In July 2017, President Donald Trump announced a ban on transgender individuals joining the military. When we hear of these horrible murders and robbing of rights of trans women, it is important to remember the work of Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, two transgender women of color that allowed for us all to be here today. Many states still allow conversion therapy against LGBTQ plus individuals, and although same-sex couples gained the right to marry in 2015, they have not gained the right to adopt nationwide. LGBTQ folks can still be discriminated against in jobs, housing, or even eating at a restaurant. According to the Trevor Project, gay and lesbian teens are 3 times more likely to have suicidal feelings than that of heterosexual youth, and 5 times more likely to actually attempt. 40% of our nation's homeless youth are LGBTQ+, according to the Williams Institute. These stories of hatred here, and when we hear stories of LGBTQ+ discrimination abroad, it is easy to think that this fight is a futile one. But with you all being here, we are showing that it is not. Today, we have a variety of speakers representing different generations of LGBTQ+ individuals and how their experiences are 50 years after that first Pride in New York City. From transgender high school kids to lesbian college kids, and hearing from a man who was alive during Stonewall, we will see how this event has taken a toll on the lives of LGBTQ+ individuals across generations. Then after that, we will have a little bit of fun. We will be having a festival with games to celebrate how far we've come and to show our visibility. We will be ending the evening with a closing ceremony that will be sure to touch your heart, so please make sure you stay for it throughout the festival. Today, we are here to show that we will not give up. We are here for Marsha P. Johnson, we are here for Sylvia Rivera, we are here for Harvey Milk, we are here for Matthew Shepard, we are here for Layla Alcorn, and we are here for all LGBTQ+ individuals who have been a part of this fight. This event is called We're Still Here, because for the past 50 years, the LGBTQ+ community has shown that they will never back down from the fight for their rights. Thank you again for coming. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy our Wyoming Association of Activists honored guest speakers. Our first speaker will be RC Johnson, who is going to speak to us about voting and its importance.
Thank you. It's so good to be among friends. Sometimes when we're moving around the city, we see, hey there, how you doing? I had to greet one of my cohorts over there. Sometimes when we're moving around the city, there are different ways in which people will demonstrate their animosity toward us. The animosity can come because of who we love. The animosity can come because of our color. It can come because of our gender. There are many different ways that people demonstrate their animosity. However, because we are free, and that's the important thing to remember, we are free. And that's what this is about. I'm calling it a celebration, Stonewall, a celebration, this in celebration of the movement. I don't even use the word riot or any of those other derogatory terms about it, because it was the beginning. And oddly enough, I don't know how many of you know how that end was, but the mafia ran it. And because the mafia ran it, they also were paying off the police not to keep the place in such a shape that it complied with the code. And so you had, there was no running water behind the bar for the glasses to be washed and this type of thing. The toilets ran over repeatedly, but because they were able to pay off the police, that was why it was maintained in that awful condition, which is politics. They were operating politically in a very, very sophisticated way because they knew that money pays. So when I say that the vote as a tool, it's not the only tool, it's a tool. And so as we look at it, it's politics because political parties, you can see, do what? What does it say they do?
Perform important tasks in government.
That's right. The important task in government. And it means that you can come together to work on things that are of interest to your group. It doesn't mean you have to belong to the Democrats, the Republicans, the Libertarians, or any of that. You could be your own political party. In fact, the state allows you to form your own political party. So just think about this as we go through here. Go ahead, and so it's to develop policies. The policies, because when Stonewall was going on, the policies were treat those people any way you want. They're trash. Nobody's gonna worry about them. And so that's the politics of it. But then when you start finding out that when numbers start to show up at the polls, it makes a difference to the existing politicians and who's in power. So when they find out that there's a voting bloc, people pay attention. And the reason I can also speak to this is because I'm old enough as dirt, and so I remember the days of the 60s. And I remember what went on in the 60s and what happened in the Black community to establish some of the power that we currently have. Not that we have enough. You never have enough in politics. Okay. Now what it does, what politics does, politicians, people in office, have the opportunity to collect money. That's your taxes. And then they spend it, or not, on things that they feel are important, unless you show up when they start to vote for the money and vote on how the money is spent. So you have to be knowledgeable about the system. The other thing is they make the laws. Weren't you saying something about the fact that there are issues in terms of adoption, employment, all that kind of stuff? Those are laws that the people that you elect have put in place. Those laws don't have to stay there. It's possible always to change laws. Now this is actually an application, and it doesn't show up very well, so I went ahead and made some copies so that everyone can kind of see what I'm talking about. This form allows people to register to vote, and sections 1 through 5 you can fill out yourself. It's section 6 that I come into play, and maybe Liz as well, because we're notaries. And the law allows for notaries to register you to vote. A lot of times people think they have to go downtown to vote or to register. Not so.
Really?
And I can register people tonight and simply mail it in, because I brought my notary seal, I brought my envelopes, I brought my stamps. You know, everything is here to make it possible. Okay, the political decisions begin with the primary. Did any of you kind of hear about those debates that they had? Some of you. I saw hands go up. That is actually the beginning of a primary process. And they're doing these debates so they can cut down the number of people who are actually going to wind up on the ballot. The date has not been set yet. Nobody has the exact date, not in Wyoming. Now, there are some early primaries going on in other states, but not in Wyoming. Guess what? It was a few years ago, did anybody see Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton come to Casper? Yeah. I got 2 hands. 3. No more than that? 4. Okay. The reason they came to Casper was because we had some ballots that they could, we had some votes, some primary votes that they could use, even though our numbers were small. But in the Democratic Party, it is an apportionment, a proportion. So whatever you get in that primary, you get that proportion of votes that you then take to the next level. And even though our numbers were small, it was so important that both of them showed up. Yeah, you're saying, ooh, can't believe that. And where was Hillary? Does anybody remember where she was? At Casper College. Where was Obama?
Rec Center.
At the rec center. And his was cooler to sit in, cooler than we're sitting in right now, because we were sitting on top of the ice rink. And it felt very good. Okay, so that begins. So in our state and in our county, we haven't set the primary yet, okay? Okay, so that's the primary. So we don't have, per se, an open primary where anybody can go in and decide who's going to be the candidate. But we do have an interesting thing that we can do in Wyoming. We can switch parties. And we can have an impact on who the candidate is going to be in the other party. Now, there was a guy this past election, and he was a bit upset, and he thought the Democrats undermined him. But their numbers were not enough to have made that difference. But that is one of the reasons that we don't have an open primary. We actually have a closed primary. So that means when you sign up on that form, and you're asked, what party do you want to belong to? It's actually a way of finding out if you want to be a part of the primary system. Because persons who are unaffiliated cannot impact anybody's primary. It's only when you declare a party that you do. Now, you'll notice I'm wearing my team rehab. This is nonpartisan. Because as a notary, and if I'm signing someone up to be by whatever preference they want, I don't need to be showing my preference. We do have situations in Wyoming where persons automatically sign you up to be a Republican. That may not be your choice. Remember, you got a mouth, and you can tell people what you want, plus the form allows you to tell what you want. Thank you. Next. Okay, so as I said, the debates are designed to narrow the field. Have any of you been able to narrow that field? How many people are running?
24.
23.
Yes.
And are we counting still?
There's only 20 were able to debate, but there were 3 who were ineligible. So
Because
they did not have enough donors. Yeah.
They didn't poll at more than
Yeah.
1%.
they That's right, so their percentage, they polled low, and so they weren't able to, they were not able to be in the debate. I'm not gonna talk about the debates. That's not my job. I have to stay nonpartisan, but I just wanted to know if you were paying attention to what's going on. The other thing to pay attention to in politics is your knowledge base. Always know where the information is. At the local level, we have the city council. They have minutes that have to be kept, and they are online. And you can read what they're doing, how they're doing it. They also have work sessions that have to be recorded. At the state level, you can get your information from a place called LSO, Legislative Service Offices. Find out whatever you want. If you want to, you can sign up for information to be sent to you on a daily basis. I get a daily feed from the governor's office. You can sign up for whatever you want. The problem that we have is seeing our legislators vote, because they refuse to put a tote board up there in Cheyenne. Casper has a tote board. You can go down to the city council and see how they're voting on any issue. At the federal level, you have the congressional record, and you also can contact your legislators. I got an email today from Senator Barrasso because I asked him to vote favorably on a monument that has been developed by a woman in Colorado, and asking that it be put on a mall situation in Washington, D.C. So I got an answer back because I told him, I said, I want to know how you're voting. And the first thing he wants to tell me is how supportive he is of women, and that he has done a presentation about that. So there are people who are trying to jump on the bandwagon. Why do you think they want to appeal to women?
So we vote for them.
Exactly, we're a voting bloc.
We're 50% or more.
That's right, women, there you go, Dorothy, tell them how it is. So when you have that kind of concern, that's why they start paying attention to you. Okay, let's go to the next one, let's see what we have. Let's get you registered. So let's take a look at that form that you have. You can fill that form out, and we'll go to the next one. Because look at what the requirements are. You have to be what?
Citizen.
What else?
Resident.
18. Now notice that I put a little extra something in here on general election day. In other words, suppose you're 17 and the election date has not been set. The general election has not been set. The date hasn't. If you're going to be 18 on that date, you can register ahead of time and be ready. The next one is not be a felon. Does that sound right?
Well, unless you are from a state where your rights were restored, even if you were a felon in a different state, if that state restores your right to vote, it is transferable to Wyoming. So once you become a Wyoming resident, you still have the right to vote.
We have a room full of knowledgeable people. However, take a look at what it says, Rights Restoration Program. Wyoming actually has a rights restoration program.
Yeah.
It really does. I don't know about any of you, but being a person of color, especially from an African point of view, we often have people who are felons. And the thing about it is, there is a program for that. And and you cannot be adjudicated mentally incompetent. Is there anybody in here mentally?
Our kids.
Your kids?
Yeah.
Oh, that was mean. But I agree with you. I had a thing with my son today, and oh God. So let's go to the next slide. That's the same form. I wanted to show it to you again. Let's go again.
RC, may I ask a quick question on
You
that?
certainly will.
It's not just also to register on this form, you can change your registration. can't you?
Absolutely. You
So-
can change your registration so that if somebody decided they were going to sign you up to be whatever party, you can change your registration on this form.
And if you had moved from, say, Laramie to Casper, don't you need to update that?
Yes.
You need to update your address, yes.
Can you use this form to do that?
You can do that.
update my gender?
I'm sorry, can you update your gender?
Yeah.
It depends upon whether or not they want to examine you. Gotcha.
That comes to the question of, do you have to show a photo ID when you go to vote?
Your ID is, well, there has been a debate about whether or not you need to do that. Most of the time, they ask you to do that, but it's not mandatory, especially if you're listed in the rolls, if you're registered and you're listed in the rolls.
I understand that's become an awkward problem for transgender folks to show an ID, and one of the solutions was to get an absentee ballot so they would not be challenged at the polls.
Absolutely, and that's an excellent point. An absentee ballot you can apply for as of July 1st of whatever year there is going to be an election. And they start spinning out those out. Yeah, Dorothy?
Can I just say it's as easy as calling the county clerk's office? You just call the county clerk's office and you say, I want my ballot sent to this address.
Exactly.
It's as easy as that.
That's right.
And what about, I'm thinking of college students who maybe are in Laramie, but their permanent address is in Casper. What can they do? Should they do?
They can have their ballot mailed to Casper, and they can vote out of Casper.
Can they vote in Laramie if they're
If they
going to
wish to
school
vote
there?
in Laramie, they can use that as the address, as long as that's the address on the voter registration listing. Or it has been changed because they decided to use that as the address.
Thank you.
Yes?
RC, I have to point out one other thing. The gender column only provides male and female.
It does.
But that is not something that's required. You do not have
No.
to name your gender.
Exactly. See, all of these great things are coming from this audience because it's so knowledgeable. Yes?
As a judge in the last election, we did not have to get a photo ID from anybody. We had to get your name.
Yeah.
We looked you up in the voter list.
That's right.
If that name is in the list, we give you a ballot.
There you
We
go.
don't do further than that, and indeed, in my case, I had someone without his glasses tell me a name that I heard, looked it up, signed him off, he went and voted, then somebody else came in with that same name, wanted to sign up and vote.
Then that was something that had to be adjudicated, right, by your
It was
judge?
not by me, exactly.
Were you a judge or you were?
I was a judge in the office, that's correct.
Oh, okay, so there are persons that get called upon to try to sort these kinds of things out.
Yes.
So, where's our little known fact? Oh, that was the one about the restoration of the voting rights. Okay, we can go forward.
And
We can
those
go, I'm sorry, stop.
Sorry. The registration of, the restoration of voting rights, is it a certain number of years?
They have dates as to when it starts. The application process is for one set of persons who have been released. This automatic system was prior to or after January 1, 2010. Here's the problem. The felon has to keep up with the fact that this is going on because it's a little known fact. That's why I started out. Because a lot of times people don't know they can have their voting rights restored.
And I know that they can because a friend of mine told us, but at that point it took like 5 years. From
That
the
was-
time-
that
that was
was-
the old way?
That was the old way, and that was when you had the probation and parole people have to go through your stuff. It's not, they've simplified it.
Oh, good.
The only problem is that
They don't
people have to know that this is the case.
And do they automatically get restored?
Automatically, and they're supposed to get a certificate
Oh.
that says that their voting rights have been restored. And the problem is, and the only person who can tell that individual if their voting rights have been restored is the clerk's office. And so they need to go down to the clerk's office, find out, did my voting rights get restored? You know, what's my status? And ask. And remember, like I said, you got a mouth. Your friends have mouths. Use it. Okay. The key Remember I said if you're 18 by the time or by your general election, then you can go ahead, register, and you are good to go. Does anybody understand why 18 is the age? Janet,
I believe it has to do with joining the military.
and
Being drafted.
being drafted, and what war caused this turmoil?
Vietnam War.
Vietnam. Young people acted up and acted out. And guess what? That power base made the law change. So you're the beneficiary of that action taken by some young people. We can go on. Youth has often made change happen. So I'm going to show you a few things that have happened worldwide because of youth. See if you can identify it. When did this happen? Stonewall. Stonewall again. They're hanging. Okay, go ahead. More Stonewall. Who's that?
She's the young lady that was shot.
Malala.
Yeah.
Malala.
Excuse me for not remembering.
No, it's okay. But what happens is she has made a difference in young women, especially in her country, getting an education. Because she spoke up. Okay, go ahead. And this is some of the demonstrations. This was 1976, question mark. Go ahead.
Oh.
And we are done.
Oh.
All right, thank you so much for that, RC. It's super important to register to vote. As you highlighted, I'm super glad you gave out those forms too, because I'm not registered yet.
And not
our
just
next-
register, but vote.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Our next speaker is a remarkable young man. He's done work with the Natrona County High School Diversity Club and the Kelly Walsh Pride Club. Cody Clark came out as transgender a while back, and he is thrilled to share his experiences as a young transgender man 50 years post-Stonewall with you all today.
Hi, I'm Cody. This is my first time going over this speech, and it's on my phone, so. Growing up, I always knew something was wrong. I feel like that's with most LGBTQ youth. Unlike other trans kids, I suppressed how I felt and didn't act out and fight back when my parents tried to put female clothing on me. I just kind of dealt with it and wore it so I could go hang out with the kids on my street and hang out with friends. I even openly talked about female parts and didn't realize that there might be something wrong with me. I didn't want to talk about it, I just wanted to enjoy my childhood. But, of course, when puberty hit and moved here to Casper, oof. Dysphoria hit, but at that time I didn't know what it was or how to deal with it. I just kind of sat there and suffered. And it wasn't until the 7th or 8th grade, I can't remember, but I know I was at CCA. I had a friend come out to me as trans and felt a strange comfort in that word. I went home and did a bunch of research and knew exactly that that was me. I didn't tell anyone, I didn't feel comfortable, and even though I had gay and trans friends, for some reason I felt like I wasn't going to be accepted, even though I know I would be. I am now still a little bit afraid to tell people about being trans and bisexual, in fear of hate crimes and being killed before I'm able to accomplish all the things I want to in my life. I'm sorry. In my freshman year of high school, I still went to CCA and was forced to take a political discourse class. We had to write a paper about something important to us, and of course, I wrote about the LGBTQ community. I decided to come out in that paper, and I felt pressured by a few people to come out. I said in that paper I was gender fluid and pansexual, and everyone seemed okay with that. A couple weeks later, though, I overheard a kid say her and her transgender crap, openly misgendering me, and I wanted to fight him, but I didn't. weren't the exact words, but like it was something like that. I didn't worry about it. It was the end of the year and didn't want to stress about it. I went to K-Dub the next year and didn't have many problems. I dated a guy that I felt pressured to. I ended things and got sick of him not listening to me about not being normal in his world, his words, and his family being homophobic against everyone and all my friends and being jerk faces. It didn't end well. Threats he threatened me, and I had to switch to NC because of all the threats. And I was even more miserable than I already was. Separated from my I was already miserable. I was separated from my friends and stuck at a school where no one wanted to be friends with me. I was bullied and papers were thrown. I'm sorry.
You're fine. You're fine.
Take your time.
It's hard stuff.
I was bullied, papers thrown at me with the word fag and queer on them, but I didn't understand why. No one knew. I told the school and nothing was being done because I was told that it never happened. I just got over it because no one listened and I just suffered through. There are still times where I do question my gender and my sexuality, but I am comfortable enough to know who I am. And I would like to end this with a quote, one of my favorite quotes from someone I look up to, John Lennon. There are two basic motivating forces, fear and love. When we are afraid, we pull back from life. When we are in love, we open to all that life has to offer: passion, excitement, and acceptance.
Thank you so much,
I'm
Cody.
sorry for calling.
No, don't be sorry. Hey, like I was saying earlier, this is a safe place.
It is.
And all of us, you can cry, you can laugh, you can smile, you can step out of your seat and dance, all right? This is a place for all of us. This is what Stonewall was about. So thank you so much for that speech. Thank you, all right? You're good? Okay. Now, our next speaker is a prominent LGBTQ+.
One question. Just tell me you're safe today.
Good. A prominent LGBTQ+ activist in Wyoming. And though you may not know her name, you'll be familiar with her work. She started the #LiveAndLetTutu movement in response to a hateful comment made by Senator Enzi. The idea was to wear tutu to fight homophobia. The event swept across Wyoming and made national news. She'll be speaking about LGBTQ+ activism from Stonewall to now and what the future holds. So without further ado, please give it up for my good friend, Bailee Foster.
When Stormy DeLabari was thrown into the back of a patrol car after fighting back and being clubbed by police, she turned to the crowd that had accumulated outside the Stonewall Inn and shouted, "Why don't you guys do something?" So here we are, 50 years later, celebrating a night that changed the course of history. What I find so inspiring about the Stonewall riots in particular was its sudden boldness and explosiveness. And though it wasn't the beginning of queer resistance in America, it was a key turning point that served as a foundation for modern-day LGBTQ+ activism. It sent the message that there is no more room for hate in this world, and by increasing visibility, it also sent the message that being different is not a plea to be brutalized. But I'm sure we all know someone who didn't quite get the memo. For me, the person who comes to mind is Wyoming's very own longtime Senator Mike Enzi. In April of 2017, Wyoming Senator Mike Enzi made a visit to my high school to answer questions and address issues that concerned our state's youth. Little did he know this endeavor would leave him in the hot seat and spark fashion protests all across the state, which would later become known as the Live and Let Tutu movement. When it was my turn to question the senator, I asked him what he and his comrades were doing to protect the rights of LGBT citizens here and how he planned to help Wyoming live up to its name as the equality state. Quickly, I was met with what I believe was a very clear message. If you're different and dare to show it, the hardships that you face are justly bestowed upon you. His exact words were as follows, quote, "Everything can't be done by law. That's one of the problems we have in this country. What we need is a little civility between people. We always say in Wyoming, you can be just about anything you want to be, as long as you don't push it in someone's face. I know a guy who wears a tutu and goes to bars on Friday nights and is always surprised that he gets in fights. Well, he kind of asks for it." After this, he went on to provide a very interesting anti-bullying visual, but looking back, it seems a little bit hypocritical. How can an official elected to represent the equality state tell a bunch of high school and middle school students that if you're different, you deserve to be beat for it? The senator later went on to offer a politician-style apology. Maybe he really didn't mean to offend anyone that fateful day in the Grable High School auditorium, but I was offended, and not by what you may think. While the statement was wrong and hurtful in itself, my main concern was in why he thought it was appropriate to say in the first place, why he thought he would get away with it. But he didn't. Only a few days later, the event made the front page of our local newspaper, and from there it shot into national news, appearing in articles by The Times, Washington Post, The Huffington Post, and countless others. Over the course of that week, pride protests and events swept their way across the state. The one I'm most proud of, though, was the one that took place at my high school, which happened to be our very first pride event. It was terrifying and exhilarating to walk in the doors dressed in pride gear, and we weren't exactly met with a completely positive response from our other students. In fact, they protested our protest by wearing NZ's name across their shirts, followed by the phrase, "We can play this game tutu." And though the students who wore tutus to support the LGBTQ+ community were greatly outnumbered, we stood our ground and marched on. And let me tell you, it made all the difference. It really was quite the experience because I had just barely come out of the closet, and all of a sudden I was the face of this big gay movement. And that's how these kinds of things happen, suddenly and explosively. That's when real change is made. But to be completely honest, I didn't quite understand the gravity of the situation until 2 years later during my senior year, when my freshmen planned their very own pride protest in response to transphobic comments made by a now former teacher. They did it without hesitation or fear, and they were met with a pretty positive response. When I told them that I was proud of them, they told me that I inspired them. Proudest moment of my life. Wow. I'm really proud. Until that very moment, I didn't comprehend that the whole ordeal with the senator really did anything more than spark controversy. But it just goes to show that everything we do to push the battle forward makes a difference. It makes it easier for someone else down the road. So my message to you is to keep marching forward. Keep paving that road, because even though times have changed in many ways for the better since 1969, we've still got a long way to go. Stonewall got the ball rolling, but we can't stop now. We are the future of activism. Because others fought for us, we have the inherited responsibility to fight for others. The future of activism is relatively simple. It's intersectional and all-inclusive. That means recognizing that the battle isn't equal for every letter in LGBTQ, etc., and working to change that. It's existing in your truest form, because that in itself is a revolutionary act. It's fluid, because the struggles we face are constantly changing and require innovative solutions. We are still here, because at every turn we have overcome the obstacles that stand in the way of progress towards equality, but we are not done. We are not done until we recover the parts of our history which have been erased. We are not done until lesbian couples can ride the bus without the fear of being savagely beaten by strangers. We are not done until sexual orientation and gender identity are protected against discrimination in the workplace in every state. We are not done until young gay men are no longer hanging limp from fences, everything but the love beaten out of them. We are not done until a nation finds it unacceptable for a president to joke about his running mate wanting to hang gay people. We are not done until the topic of conversion therapy is nothing more than a back-in-my-day story we tell our grandkids to make them feel grateful for living in a better world. We are not done until it is a universal understanding that love is not a choice, but hatred sure is. Then, maybe we can call it a day. But until then, why don't we do something?
Thank you.
Our final speaker is a champion for LGBTQ plus rights here in Wyoming. He has been serving with PFLAG, Casper Pride, and helping with organizations like Out in Wyoming and Wyoming Equality for years now. Rob Johnston is a husband, a father to a transgender daughter, and a proud and triumphant member of the LGBTQ plus community. Rob is here to tell us about his experiences as a gay man here in Wyoming and what Stonewall means to him and the effect it has had on him since.
I'm very nervous. And I want to salute, really, the young people who have pulled this together. You honor me. In 1968, I was a sophomore at Penn State University. I was so in the closet that it was just ridiculous. I hated myself. I had been part of a fraternity my freshman year, and I found out one night from my roommate that I was being blackballed from the fraternity because I was too effeminate. And so they ended up not blackballing me, but every time I showed up at that fraternity house for the rest of the semester, as soon as I walked in the door, I had to do 100 push-ups and sit-ups to kind of prove that I was a man. Over the summer, in a conversation with my parents, I said, I don't know that I want to be part of that fraternity anymore. I don't feel like I can do this. What I didn't tell them was that I was gay, and that what was being told, what I felt was my own homophobia coming true and loud and clear. At Penn State at that time, we had a vice president for student affairs who was quoted one weekend as saying, "I'd rather be a bigot than a faggot." And I'm going, oh Jesus, if this is what our vice president of student affairs is saying, you know, I can't come out to anybody. I ended up being a resident assistant in the dorms and was part of the dean of student staff. And I had a guy that who was, I thought, my friend, but he threatened all the time to tell everybody I was gay. Because he had seen me one night cruising the parks, which is what you did at that time, because that was the only time, especially if you weren't 21, that you could meet up and hook up with anybody. I ended up meeting with somebody one night and went back to the fraternity at some point and told them what was going on, and they went and beat the guy up. I'm here today, and I do all the work I do today to kind of plead for forgiveness for what I did as a kid when I hated myself to a degree that today I didn't think was possible. I came out when I was 25. I remember when Stonewall happened, pretty much, I didn't know about Stonewall at all. I knew Judy Garland had died the week before. As a gay man, that's what I knew. Heaven forbid Judy Garland died of a drug overdose. And I didn't know about Stonewall. I ended up leaving Penn State and getting a job at Cornell. I worked at Cornell University for a couple of years and worked for the School of Industrial and Labor Relations and got fired from that job because I was too effeminate. And they didn't think that I was a good representative of their organization with the business and labor union community. So my boss at that, the woman that I had worked for previously, her sister was the vice president for student affairs at Malone College in Claremont, California. And I took the opportunity to do a 3,000 mile, what I refer to as a geographic, to just get away from freaking everybody and start my life over. And pretty much I came out when I moved to California. I had a guy that was from Sweden who was a RA in the dorms then, and he arrived and I thought I was pretty good at covering up who I was and my sexuality and all that stuff. And Pierre looked at me and he goes, "Let's go to a gay bar in LA." So we drove into LA and went to a gay bar, and as always happens sometimes in the gay community and in our generation, is other gay men reported me to the president of the university and said, did you know that your assistant dean of students is gay and was going into a gay bar? And I really have a lot of respect for David Alexander, who was the president of Pomona College then, because he said that is none of your fucking business. And that began my journey of feeling as if there was some acceptance in the world. I came out to my parents when I was 25, or to my family when I was 25. My dad had been dead for a couple years then, and I was back east visiting my mom and sisters, and that was the year Chorus Line won all the awards on Broadway. And it was the first time that I saw gay men being recognized for powerful work. And this is my own homophobia, but I grew up thinking that I was like Liberace, thinking that I was like all of these people that I didn't want to be, okay? And I didn't know who I was. And my sister and was making all of these faggot comments while these guys were getting these awards. And I got on the plane and I wrote what my family refers to as the infamous letter. Basically coming out, sent all of them copies. It was pretty dramatic. And so what happened is that my sister and both sisters and mother got on a plane within a month and flew to California to see what I was like and who I was living with at that point. And it started a long journey for my family. It took my older brother and his wife, some of you know, have heard this story. My older brother and his wife, when they heard that I was gay, made decisions that every time I came east, they would pack up their kids and take them somewhere else because they didn't want their kids to know me and be around me. In around 1980, I'm living in LA, and I got sober. And most of the guys that I got sober with died of AIDS. It's just when that was starting, and so my life for years was just nothing but funerals. And again, that self-hatred kicks in about feeling like, oh God, we've been singled out one more time. I had the opportunity, when I turned 40, I sold everything I owned and got in the car with my dog and spent 2 months traveling 2-lane highways around the country and camping, which everybody looks at me and goes, you were camping? Yeah, we were camping. I didn't die. But I ended up in DC, and I want to talk a little bit about this because I think it's, for me, in my history, it's really important. When I moved to DC, I got a job as a trainer for a company that ran a day treatment program for people who were emotionally disturbed and developmentally disabled. And it was an African-American owned firm. And I was one of 5 white people out of 200 in this company. And that company showed me more acceptance than I had probably ever felt in my life. And I learned more from those men and women and those clients. I would do AIDS training kind of things. And so I still remember the client one day who I had shown them how to use condoms. And so this client came in the next day with his condom. All right, and the whole staff was just appalled. And I said, well, at least he used it. Now I have to show him how to dispose, of it, that kind of thing. So what I want to say is that, and I met Carl in 1997, and it was a fluke. I had hired the kind of very flamboyant hairdresser to kind of, or interior decorator to help decorate my house, and it just was god-awful. And Carl worked for an interior decorator that we knew, and so his boss said, well, Rob, why don't you come in and meet Carl? And it was lust at first sight. And we've been together ever since.
It was respect at first.
No, it was well, from you. And we've been together for now over 20-some years. We were when we moved to Wyoming because Carl's dad had a heart attack and a stroke, and we knew that we needed to be near him. And I have never regretted that move. I probably was closer to his dad than I was to my own parents. His dad and I would go for walks every morning, and I was the son that he could talk to because he didn't raise me. Carl jokes about the fact that his dad would call when he was off working on a rig somewhere, and would talk to Carl for about 10 seconds, and then goes, "Where's Rob? Put Rob on." And Carl would, never mind, Dad.
And no, say, "Is Rob home?" And I say, "No, he's not." I say, "Okay, tell him I love him. Bye." So we were asked by Wyoming Equality if we would be one of the couples that would sue the state for marriage equality. And we said yes. And so we were part of that process. And I have to say that the day that we walked from my office, which was on Walcott, across the street to the courthouse, was probably the first and only time in public that we ever have held hands. I love that man more than anything in the world. And I still get pissed that I can't show that and feel safe in our community. We then decided a couple of years ago to become therapeutic foster parents, and we're one of the first gay couples to do that. And then we ended up adopting both kids. Hunter was our first, and he's the love of, to be honest, he's the love of my life, and I don't share that with him a lot, but this is a kid who, his trauma issues and stuff like that are so immense, and he's loving, and he's lovable. And he's convinced that I'm bisexual because I used to have a relationship at one point in my life, way back when, with a woman. So when Carl and I will refer to me as being gay, Hunter will scream, "No, Rob's not. He's a bisexual." He made a point of coming up to both of us at the last Pride March to say, "I love you guys, and I want you to be safe, but you know that I'm afraid for you." Our daughter is a whole other story, okay? We thought we were fostering and adopting a gay boy, who then decided that she's not a boy, that she's a girl. She's a mean girl.
She's a mean girl. She really is. And it's really easy to get angry with her, but the reality is that I'm not living in her skin, and I don't have a family that put me up for adoption and paid for two gay guys to adopt me, okay? Because they didn't want me anymore. I have to always remember that when I'm in my fit of anger and rage because she's thrown away stuff that she throws away dishes, okay? So her cleaning her room is to get garbage bags filled with stuff that include all of the dishes and silverware and other things that I've had for 20 years, okay?
My whole life.
Okay,
15 years. Yeah.
and I want to kill her.
Because we bought it at Neiman Marcus.
Right, okay. She hasn't cared. Now, if the Kardashians had gotten it, okay, it would be a whole other story. But what I have to remember with Kylie is that I'll sometimes refer to Kylie, and I was introduced tonight as having a trans daughter. And Kylie will say to me, "I'm not trans, I'm a woman." And I have to respect that. I also have to say to her, "I'm also very concerned about your safety." And she carries a knife for protection. And I'm always afraid that she's going to pull that knife on the wrong person. And then she's going to be one of those trans statistics that we read about. I would love to say that I think we've come a long way. And I think
we've come much, much further than when I was 25 I would ever have imagined. But I'm very concerned about our country today. You know, I'm glad that we have youth who are willing to fight, because we're going to need every voice imaginable, because I think we have the battle of our lives coming before us. All of our protections are being taken away, starting with the trans community in the military and in other ways, and it's piecemeal. You know, all of the references that during the Obama years that were on the websites related to LGBT issues are all gone. We don't exist in this current administration when you go online. I just took a new job related to reproductive rights, and we're about to get a gag order, you know, from the feds about what we can and cannot do in reproductive health clinics around the state of Wyoming. Okay. We're very concerned that what's going to happen is that there are going to be some, how do I say this, very staunch conservative people who will show up at our clinics pretending that they want services just to see how we respond. And our fear is that all it takes is one bad experience and we're shut down. Okay? So that's the environment that we're in. And I'm scared. I want my daughter to be safe. I want my son to be safe when he talks about having two gay dads. I want you to be safe as you continue in school and face all that crap that you're facing. Okay? And I want you to keep your rage alive well and just keep pushing. Okay? When you see an old fart like me, it's quite appropriate sometimes to say, what are you doing? Okay? Because I think even though we've been here, how many of you watch, oh God, Tales of the City? Okay, have any of you seen the new one, the new series? Okay. The new series has an evening one night where a young African-American gay man goes to a dinner party with all of the people who would be my generation. And the people from my generation use the term tranny. Okay? And the guy walks out of a party and has a huge fight and actually breaks up with his lover because his lover didn't support him in his anger and rage over what had occurred. And what happened is that those people from my generation were using the AIDS crisis and everything else as our pass for anything else that we could say. Do you see what I'm getting at? And the truth of the matter is that we can't use that anymore. That's not my ace of clubs. Okay? My ace of clubs is I don't want any kid to have to go through the hell that I went through as a kid, trying to figure out who I was and that I was okay. I'm honored to be here tonight. I hope I wasn't too much of a downer, but I'm glad you're all here, and I'm glad to see some people that I've not seen and don't know, and so thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That was very in-depth and covered a lot. That was awesome. So, in order to make sure this evening isn't all serious, like we've had 3 very, very serious speeches, no offense to you guys, I love them all. But, you know, we want to take some time to celebrate, right? Like, it is 50 years after Stonewall. We can get married. We can do all sorts of great things. So, let's celebrate a little bit. So we're going to be having a festival portion here shortly. Let me do a little bit here. So at 8:20, we're going to have a short interactive closing ceremony. Please, please, please stay for that closing ceremony. It is going to knock your socks off. Like, not to pat myself on the back too much, because I'm the one who wrote it, but I promise you it will be worth it. So 8:20, please be back in here. Until then, we are going to have a couple different things going on. We have all sorts of different booths. If you go through this door, through that archway, all sorts of tables. We have a poster board that we'd like you all to sign. We have buttons and all sorts of other fun things.
And we have a room set up for RC to do voter
We
registration.
do, yes. So if you're not registered to vote, please do that as well. And we're also going to have some activities going on in here. So if you want to stay in here with me, if you haven't gotten tired of my voice yet, otherwise the activities are also out there. So see you all at 8:20.
That's why I can't. No, stop. I'm going to talk to you. It's going to be about that's why I might never try and look at it for your stance. And try to, because I've been feeling really guilty about being out and everything. And it's your birthday on Wednesday.
My friend.
Yeah. Is everybody settled? Everybody ready? All right, thank you so much for coming tonight. I just want to say real quick, this has been really, really good for all of us, and this was our first event as the WAA, and it went better than I think Hunter and I ever could have dreamt of. So
These are wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so on that note, welcome back everyone. We hope you enjoyed our festival. Our closing ceremony will be interactive, so please take a tea light and close your eyes. Do not turn the light on quite yet. We will be reading off a series of statements. We're having you keep your eyes closed to ensure anonymity. If these apply to you, please turn the light on and keep it on. Nobody will know why your light is on. We understand that this section of the evening may be a bit much for some people, as it will focus on some uncomfortable and touchy subjects. This is a judgment-free zone. It's okay to express your emotions in any way you need to here, but if at any point you need to leave the room, just make sure you do so in a quiet and respectful fashion. Now, please turn the light on if any of the following resonate with you.
I have been bullied or cyberbullied, picked on or made fun of by my peers because of my sexual orientation or gender identity.
I have been called a homophobic or a transphobic slur.
I have been physically harassed, assaulted, or threatened because of my sexual orientation or gender identity.
I have felt unsafe at work or school because of my sexual orientation or my gender identity.
I have had issues with my family or felt unsafe at home because of my sexual orientation or gender identity.
I have been touched in some way by the HIV/AIDS crisis.
My mental health has suffered in some way because of problems related to my sexual orientation or gender identity.
I have had any other problems, disadvantages, or difficulties because of my sexual orientation or gender identity. For just a moment, keep your lights on and your eyes closed. Remember that this is a judgment-free zone. We are all here with our own unique struggles and stripes. Now, if your light is on, keep it on. If it's off, keep it off. Everyone open your eyes.
Yeah. Let's look around in this room. There's a lot of lights on. If I had a light, mine would be on for sure. Truth is, it's tough to be part of the LGBTQ plus community. But think about it for a minute. Tonight we've seen the resilience of our community. We're still here, 50 years after Stonewall. We all face our struggles, but we cannot be put down. We go through Stonewall, through Harvey Milk and Matt Shepard, and through things like Live and Let Tutu, but we will not be kept down. And I will tell you this, after Stonewall, it was 46 years before we got our right to marry nationwide, but we will not let another 46 years go by to obtain the rest of our rights. Tonight, on the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, we say no more. No more discrimination in our jobs, in our housing, in our everyday lives. No more feeling unsafe or being treated like second-class citizens. No more families broken, no more bodies broken, no more psyches broken. We are all equal, we are all one. And 50 years after Stonewall, we are gathered here to ensure our voices are heard. That is the point of pride, to give a voice to the voiceless, a family to those who may not have one, and a community for us all. I hope that 50 years from today, at the 100th anniversary of Stonewall, this pride thing will no longer be necessary. but it will take all of us doing what we're doing tonight, gathering together and saying, no more. Now turn your lights off.
Some of you may have seen our poster board during the festival. We asked you to each leave a fingerprint and tell us what Stonewall meant to you. For a lot of you, the message is clear. It means hope, the fight for equality, something to be thankful for. Remember why your light was on, if it was. Stonewall, in and of itself, was a tragic event. Morality police raiding a gay bar, checking for 3 pieces of gender-appropriate clothing, a riot that lasted for nearly a week. Members of the LGBTQ plus community literally fighting for their lives. It doesn't seem like an event to idolize, or an event to give people hope. It seems like it would be regarded as something sad or heart-wrenching or tragic, and I'm sure it was at the time, but today, we can thank those activists, no, those warriors who fought bravely for their community. Now, think of your own lives. Every time you face discrimination, there is hope in it.
Now, I know it might not seem like that at the time. I know that I can personally recall instances where I've been discriminated against. At the time, I did not feel hope when my former employer told me that he would never hire a gay person. Surprise. Thank you. At the time, I did not feel hopeful when I was told I was going to hell. At the time, I did not feel hopeful when I was chased and shouted at for kissing my then girlfriend. But now I feel hope. I know it might sound crazy, but think about it. Tonight, when we thank folks like Marsha P. Johnson or Harvey Milk, we realize that it is our time to carry on their fight. Look at that flag over there. That flag was flown, what was it, how many years ago?
Just before 2007.
Before 2007, to commemorate the Stonewall riots.
Over the U.S. Capitol.
Over the U.S. Capitol. Look at that, okay? We're coming a long way. Now, every time we face hate or discrimination, we must pick up their torch and fight. And sure, we might not be fighting with bricks like at Stonewall, and we may never gather rioting crowds like Harvey Milk did. Our ways of fighting are subtler, yet effective. 50 years after Stonewall, every last one of us in this room is a warrior. So thank you all, you brave souls, you warriors, for being here tonight. You are the reason we fight for equality, and you, in and of yourself, are the fight for equality. We cannot thank you enough for all you do, for all you will do, and for all you have done. Thank you.
Bravo.